Welcome to Dark Side of the Moon.
Welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Vincent Green. Noel John Tootie's missing in action. We still got Karen Mack in the back. This is Dark Side of the Moon. Let's get to it, motherfuckers. All right, folks, we're back this time, and I'm not alone. I seemed like I was alone at the start, but we got a bit of a 25YL reunion going on here because we got Mr. Don Shanahan, the Don himself, and Will, the Tuscan Raider Johnson. How's it going, motherfuckers? You're a sand person, Will. You're a sand person.
You're a sand person. I'll be a little Jawa then.
I don't want to be canceled by anyone for this comment, but what the fuck is this guy saying? I don't even understand a word coming out of his mouth.
It all sounds like symphony to me. I'm good to go. Translate this. You need subtitles on the bottom of your Zoom screen right now?
Yeah, shit. Should I put captions on?
No. We're doing great. We're glad to be here. When you told me, anyway, the Marvel shill, that we were going to be doing, Marvel films, and you invited me, I was like, well, thank you. I can't wait to talk about some of the great masterpieces of the MCU. And then you're like, yeah, how about Iron Man 2 and Incredible Hulk? And I was like, sounds great. Thank you.
He offered me Captain America First Avenger. So
what?
He likes me more.
Well, me and Don did have a discussion though one time about Marvel in general, and he mentioned that I asked him, he mentioned that he liked Captain America, and then we actually had a discussion. I said, which one did you prefer, First Avenger or Winter Soldier? And that's how I knew, so that's why I offered him. And Will, you said you only wanted to do Ant-Man originally, and I wanted to get you on earlier in the run.
I want to do all the Ant-Man.
Yeah. What did you make this total side note of the Quantum Mania logo? What the fuck's going on there?
I'm fine with it. I mean, nothing about Ant-Man should be taken seriously, so I'm okay with it. And actually, I'm going to tie in some of the talk we have about Incredible Hulk into Ant-Man a little bit, because I do think a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff in Incredible Hulk led to what would happen with Edgar Wright and Ant-Man, personally, because based on the experience they had with the I'm trying to be nice here. Complex character that is Edward Norton. So
yeah, no, this is I mean, I know it's low on most people's ranks for the MCU, but this is, from a production standpoint, since Marvel has dodged a lot of its production bullets or things ended before things shot, like, the Edgar Wright stories that go with Ant-Man are always kind of like oh man, what it could have, should have stuff. But you get this one. But you get this one where it made it through. It was kind of the maybe film, because like they didn't know Iron Man was going to hit and hold on. And then Edward Norton, we'll talk about that, I'm sure, when the show goes in, where that all turned out. But this one becomes I feel like Marvel's most maligned movie. This one really got
until Eternals anyway.
But they don't have like production strife bullshit. They just have bad feedback from fans.
Yeah. And I think as well, when you look at the Incredible Hulk, it's a pivotal moment for Marvel, like you said. Iron Man 1 was on the back of Iron Man 1. This did not do so well in the box office. It barely made double its money, if anything. And as you said, you had Edward Norton, the whole production issues as well with him, and him wanting to. I think he was credited originally as a co-writer, and then he wanted his name taken off of it afterwards because he believed his story had been changed so significantly that it wasn't really the vision he had and the kind of strife they had. And I think, when they look at this, I think Marvel maybe is what Will alluded to with Edgar Wright, is that Marvel are like, okay, we're going to tighten the reins on all the productions. We're going to have more control. We're kind of going to go back to the old studio model where we control the production from A to B to C, and if you're not on board, you're gone, even if you're an Edgar Wright or an Ed Norton,
Yeah, and they've still hired talented directors along the way. I mean, Chloe Zhao counts as that with Eternals, but you're right about control. Like they will hire people with resumes that have solid stuff to them, but not somebody who has an established ego or an established kind of clout that says, hey, you're not going to be able to come in here and boss around. Like if they were to ever hire, I know it's aiming to the top, but if they were to hire like Christopher Nolan, Christopher Nolan would boss in there and go, okay, Marvel, I'd love to work with you. Love the paycheck. This sounds great. I'm going to want it this way. I'm going to want it that way. And not people who are willing to play ball. And by hiring all these very talented indie or small or even kind of reclamation project directors, you get people who are willing to play ball, but then still bring their chops. You know, they still bring some talent to the table.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And don't ever say Christopher Nolan to my face again, Don. For those who don't know, I'm not a very big Christopher Nolan person. I'm not into that cult, frankly.
Tenet was terrible. Tenet was terrible.
I didn't see Tenet. I didn't.
And it is terrible.
So it's terrible. Yeah. It really inverted my opinion of Christopher Nolan. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. And to me, that's two losses in a row because Dunkirk did nothing for me either.
Interstellar for me, I prefer Dunkirk to Interstellar because I love World War II movies and World War One movies and stuff like that. So Interstellar to me, I think Dunkirk kind of set out to do something and it maybe achieved its goals a lot better than Interstellar, because Interstellar to me felt like it got muddled, especially with the way it was trying to convey the communication through the bookcase or whatever.
Yeah,
interdimensional ghost. That's
I said stop talking about Christopher Nolan. I don't care. Stop talking about it.
We talk about Louis Leterrier. Is that where we're going here? The guy who started, he was the Kickstarter of the Transporter series, and that was his claim to fame getting into this.
Yeah,
and that's the kind of talent Marvel went for. Like, a guy with some proven action chops, something with some visual style, and they're like, hey, we can amplify him into something bigger, and brought in a talented guy. I wish they would have worked with him more, because I think Louis does good stuff.
I think that what gets lost is, a lot of those phase one directors are really good directors. They may not be, Kenneth Branagh is a big name, Favreau at the time wasn't the Favreau we have now, who's known as like the franchise resurrector. Leterrier made great, he made great little action films, and I wouldn't say indies, but he made, lower budget, fun little films. Like I love, I think everywhere else it's called Danny the Dog, but it's called Unleashed in America. I love that film. It's a great film. And Kenneth Branagh was a huge Thor fan as a kid. And
who did Captain America? Joe Johnson.
Joe Johnson, and he
was coming out of nothing too. All these reclamation projects, because Favreau was like Elf and Zathura. And and then obviously the Swingers actor and a guy who did as much acting as he did directing, but then he hit Iron Man, and he's never looked back to little things, chef, but nothing too much than that.
You can do a chef when you've done an Iron Man.
See, that's the thing. Like once you got that clout and you're making that money, and it turns into that same cycle we've seen so many directors do, like make that one big movie in order to bankroll the three things you really want to do on the side. And he's starting to do like Star Wars to him. That's the crazy thing about Favreau, that something tells me The Mandalorian is his little side hustle bought for by other things. Like it's just such a small thing to do compared to the next big movie.
Isn't it the kind of thing like you can only ask for that if you've had 5 or 6 or 6? Like if you have a Jungle Book, like, you know what I mean? You have to be really entrenched in the Disney kind of world before you can say, I'd like to do a Western about a bounty hunter that's not Django or Boba Fett, and I want to set it in the Star Wars universe, you know what I mean? So like you need to kind of have that clout. And I think like if anybody has earned it, it is a Jon Favreau over the past, 10 or 12 years,
And then like Louis, I'm looking at his filmography, like he bankrolled the Incredible Hulk. Not that it was the biggest success, but it was that Marvel stamp of like, nice job, look at you, make a superhero film. He turned that into Clash of the Titans, and then the Now You See Me Magician movie in 2013. So he has stayed at that plateau of making semi-decent things, like again, but both count as hits. Like, the first Clash of the Titans did just fine. It wasn't a Marvel level blockbuster, but it easily made its money back and played well overseas. And then Now You See Me was that classic, something you would have made in the 90s, like a $40 million movie that made 100, and that's all you needed to do.
But isn't box office success is not always the biggest indicator for a quality movie, though,
I agree. Because like Clash of the Titans is huge cheese.
And so like when you look at the kind of the birth of the MCU now, like this is kind of right on the eve of Disney's intervention into the Marvel world, and it's like if you look at Iron Man 1 and you look at the Incredible Hulk, stylistically they're kind of darker in their content than maybe what the Disney MCU movies have been going forward, and they're kind of more in the realm of action than they go more fantastical as they go along later. And like, Will, I'm going to throw this to you because you're a big Iron Man fan, and it's at the start of this. Do you think like you like the tone of the earlier MCU movies, is like an Iron Man and Incredible Hulk, and did you like them the way they were, or can you see the difference when Disney has come in, bought Marvel up afterwards in the ones like Thor, Captain America, First Avenger, and on to Avengers?
Well, I will say that, and I will answer the question, I'm just going to back up just a teeny bit with it, is that I think that a lot of these films in phase one are viewed through hindsight. You know, like for instance, my kids, I have a 12-year-old, and all her friends are into Marvel, and you know, my daughters watched all the films with me. I took them to go see Eternals, which they loved, by the way, which is great.
Eternals too.
I loved it, but I remember like they were having conversations in the car about the films, and they were like, "Well, all the MCU films are great except for the Incredible Hulk," and I'm like, "Well, what's wrong with the Incredible Hulk?" They're like, "Yeah, it doesn't like feel like the other Marvel movies," and I think there is a disconnect where it's like, that was the beginning, you know, that was, I mean, Iron Man 1 is very drastically different in tone and scale to Iron Man 3, you know, like it's like the universe was just building itself. My only issue with phase one is, and they couldn't help themselves, they had to do it to build this universe, is I'm not, there's new ways to do origin stories. I think spending entire movies on origin stories is kind of a played concept that we don't need anymore. Like movies like Hellboy and this film, Incredible Hulk, actually do a great job of kind of saying like, okay, we're not going to spend the expected 40 to 60 minutes of here is the origin, you know, of a character, especially when you know all the beats. That was what the pre-MCU films, that's what really haunted them. Yeah. Is that you went in and you were like, well, I know what the first hour is going to be. Like, I want something different. Now, you can overcome that with Iron Man, like with a compelling person like Robert Downey Jr., like when you're like, I don't mind going on that journey. And Captain America is okay because not only is Chris Evans charming, but the setting is kind of a character in itself as well. You know, but you know, that's why I don't think the Amazing Spider-Man films with Garfield work, because the first film, you're like, I know every beat of this story. Why am I watching?
Yeah, stop kidding, Ben Parker.
So it's kind of, so to answer your question, like I like it because in hindsight, and I don't have a problem with formula, because formula is how we've structured a lot of our stuff. If it's a good formula, why fix it if it's broke? Right. If it's not broke. But I do like sometimes when I rewatched all these with my daughter, like I said, hey, let's start with Iron Man. It is kind of almost refreshing to see that there is a little bit of a different taste in there. It's kind of like watching a good example I'll give you is Star Trek The Next Generation, one of my favorite shows. Okay. The first two seasons are not the best quality wise, but they do have a distinctive characteristic to them that makes them very different from when they found their groove and made seasons 3 through 7 of Star Trek TNG are excellent. They're great storytelling and they have a formula that works. It makes those earlier seasons kind of a little weird, like a little redheaded stepchildy. Doesn't mean they're not good. It just means that they're a little different.
They're different, yeah.
And that's okay because I think that's a great example to look at. It's like there's nothing wrong with formula. I think one of the big complaints about the MCU now, and which makes no sense in regards to the Eternals criticism, is everyone's just like, well, it's all the same. And then it's like we make Eternals, which is very different. They go, oh, well, we don't want that though. It's like, well, wait a minute. You wanted something different. We gave you something different. So, yeah. And I also think that because the MCU is so ubiquitous in society now, people they're automatically going to the formula instead of seeing the little details. Like, especially phase 2. I mean, you had your street level heroes, you had your big universe stuff. I mean, you had Guardians of the Galaxy and Ant-Man in the same phase, and you couldn't be further apart in terms of what's going on in those films. And then you have something like Winter Soldier, which kind of has this throwback 70s style, and then you've got let's move ahead to something like Thor Ragnarok, which is clearly a very Kirby inspired. Design. It's almost a comedy more than anything else. I don't think the MCU gets the benefit of the doubt that they have individual films. Like it's everyone just says, oh, they're all the same. And it's like, well, that's not true. And going to this, back to Incredible Hulk, is one of those ones where when you watch it, you're kind of like, wow, this is a kind of a grittier mid-2000s. It has that mid-2000s Bourne Identity kind of feel to it, where it's very gritty. The action is a little bit more realistic. There's a whole sequence in I think is he in Brazil? I can't remember. Brazil,
it's in Brazil, yeah.
And he's running through the slums, and it's very kinetic and very
favelas will.
Yeah, it's yeah. No, it's just I think that when people look at it, I think people are looking at it now and saying, well, yeah, compared to what they found in the formula. Like I said, I would rather sit down and watch probably a season 3 or 4 TNG episode than a 1 and 2. Doesn't take the value away from it. And I think I think we're in this weird pattern where it's like, okay, the MCU is all the same. And then when you go back and you talk about how they actually are different in the beginning, it's like, well, those suck though. And then when you try to make a change now, it's like, well, that sucks too. So it's like you can't win. No one can win in this argument. It's
yeah. I like this one because this is exactly what they should have done with something like Spider-Man. Like the Incredible Hulk is one of those, thanks to the old TV show and enough cartoon iterations and the popularity of that big green guy. This is one of those characters you don't need an origin story for. You don't, like you could just jump right in and be like, all right, the Hulk exists. It's an issue. Here we go. And this movie does a great job of not little beats here, little beats there of like just, and we're talking about just what has been in the past. And obviously that eternal quest of trying to cure himself, where that kind of gives you shadows backwards to what most people know, which is the old Bill Bixby, Lou Ferrigno show, which was all about that, where it was the fugitive, where it's the, it might be Freak of the Week and Adventure of the Week and Town of the Week and that old TV show, but it was that overarching thing of, I don't want this and I want to get rid of it. This isn't fun. And you have Edward Norton going there with that, and it's super helpful. And there's no origin story in this one. You can just go. And other than the globetrotting idea of him on the run in Brazil at that time, this isn't a huge mega global catastrophe, massive world saving movie. This is street level Hulk movie. And that's the cool thing too, because that's another vibe that people understand from the old TV shows. That was a super street level show as well. So the fun part there is like you have at the time, and I still think now when you think about it, like you have your biggest, strongest, most amazing world dominating character, if you want it to be just a street level guy trying to cure himself in Brazil, trying to get back to his old college and just connect with his girl, and the simplicity of this. Looking back, and Will's right, when you look back at this movie is almost slight when you think about how big everything had to be when it turned, when it got to the action stakes or the villain stakes. And you don't have that here. You have a mad military guy who's a father-in-law, if you want to think of it in terms of where Bruce and Betty are, just trying to chase a mistake down. And that's a very small story compared to shit's going down. When's the Hulk going to get here to save the day? And it's never about that. And I dig this movie a lot. It's not one of the bottom 5 Marvel movies for me because it goes away from what became formula that followed. And I know that we're going to probably get to this in larger paragraphs, but I know Norton was kind of maligned in what he did, but I admire what he's going for, because you could kind of tell from the production stories that he wanted something darker and more conflicted because of what this character is and what he represents, because he is a true menace when pushed in the wrong way. And I didn't need Sonny, I'm always angry and save the day superhero that Ruffalo pulled off a couple movies later. So I super appreciate this movie. And I think when you put that to what Lettier can do as a director, and I know I'm jumping ahead, but like Will's right, you got that kind of that aughts feel of the favela stuff in Brazil is a cool little wicked chase. And then that fight in Harlem at the end is cut and shot completely different than Marvel movies that came after. And that vibe of it is something I still dig.
And one thing you mentioned was Edward Norton, and just like Iron Man 1, and Will said, when you look back at these movies, you're kind of looking back in hindsight of what came afterwards, and it kind of it not sours, but it kind of does change your sense of perception of how you perceive these movies looking back at them, and the what ifs that are attached to them. And just like Terrence Howard was recast in Iron Man 1, Edward Norton I know is a central protagonist on like a secondary character like James Rhodey Rhodes, but we have Mark Ruffalo coming in I think it was like 3 or 4 years later with the Avengers. And what do you think of the two like when you look at Ed Norton's portrayal, would you have liked to have seen him make more Hulk movies? And I know there's a rights issue because Universal or Paramount own the distribution rights to the Hulk, and that's why there's no solo movies at the moment. And but they don't own the rights to in kind of team ups, so that's why he's in an Avengers or he makes an appearance in other people's movies like a Thor Ragnarok. Because sorry, no, I just 1 second, I just got the 40-minute limit thing.
Okay.
Shit.
If you have to take this, well, here, do a count. We're not at the first break point, are we?
No, we're at 20 minutes.
Okay. Then how good are you about stitching what you need to stitch when the time comes?
Carl can do that, no problem.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just
be mindful of the clock when someone, like if we're at 9 minutes now, but if someone's in the middle of something, find a stopping point before the timer goes out, right?
Yeah, cool. And I'll hit you back up. I didn't know the thing. I'll hit you back up with a different Zoom account, so there's no.
I'll do a Norton answer here.
All right, cool. Go ahead.
Yeah, I really do wish Edward Norton stuck around. And here's one difference between him and Ruffalo that I think is essential is I never got the vibe from Ruffalo later that torture was really set in terms of like the anger issues that becomes, that's kind of the spine of the Hulk, but then also the torture and the conflict. Like Ruffalo was always still kind of the smart guy in the background, played the introverted guy who was, trying to keep himself calm. And like I made the joke about his line of I'm always angry, and I don't mind that. I think you can have a Hulk that is at that point when you have Ruffalo in the Avengers and he's a veteran Hulk, so to speak, and he's been at this for a long time and he's gone through everything he's gone through to try to figure himself out. And this movie and all the efforts to kind of bring the team together, it's not unfathomable for me that you get a Bruce Banner who can turn it on and turn it off. And I don't think that's a super big hang up. I think some comic book fans saw that moment and go, wait, he can't do that. I'm like, he could if he wants to. But for Norton, I like the unpredictability and you didn't know, or he had to really be mindful and careful about how things would set him off. And it wasn't as easy as flicking a switch. And the Ruffalo that we've gotten since then, especially this smart version of Ruffalo here at the end, where it's just a waste of a great character. I know Hulk is, I know Professor Hulk stuff. Like I know we've had that iteration of the character in the comics and it works, but at the same time, I just want my ass kicking Hulk. And Norton, to me, when push comes to shove, plays that torture better, is a better actor than Mark Ruffalo. Mark Ruffalo is a very good actor, but man, Edward Norton's on another level. And when you bring that kind of talent and that kind of guy who can play that conflict into a movie, I know he's a pain in the ass on the set, and this is not the first movie he's been a pain in the ass in the set for. I do wish he would have stayed around. I think you'd get a completely different tone and vibe out of that. And even when you start to see, at the same time, though, I admit that it might not have worked with what they made since. Like, I don't think the Edward Norton Hulk is doing the Black Widow love, minor romance angle. I don't know if that would play in terms of like the world, not World War Hulk, but the Planet Hulk half-assed version we got in Ragnarok, which is such a missed thing. But I know we can't make solo movies because World War Hulk.
What the hell is happening around? What the hell is going on?
I know.
Professor Hulk. What the fuck is wrong with you? All right, never mind.
No. But like, I like Professor Hulk where it can fit and go, and obviously you need some science at the end to save the day and get to the end of the whole arc and journey and all that stuff like that. But I mean, we're gonna watch him coming up here in She-Hulk, and it's just gonna be like, wait, you're still the nerdy dork that's just tall and big for the sake of being tall and big. It's just
not necessarily true. That's not necessarily true.
I would love for him to revert.
No, he already has though. That's the thing. Shang-Chi. He has reverted. We don't know why.
Yeah. I guess he's reverted. We'll see where this goes. But
that's what I'm saying. We don't know. There might be something going on there because.
But I wanted. But like, if we were to ever get to, my dream was World War Hulk. Like, get a big established MCU and then have Edward Norton fucking snap, and that'd be fantastic. I would more believably see Norton snap than I would see Ruffalo snap. So.
I'm gonna go the comic route with you too, because that. To me, the World War Hulk was a really okay. If we're going to talk about like, money grubbing, like, appeal to the most common denominator thing. Like, I read Planet Hulk when it came out, and that was so freaking good. That series was so good. And then some of the offshoots that the comics had, and then it went right into World War Hulk, and the idea is interesting, but it was so dumb. Like, just the way that they couldn't figure out a way to make the stakes actually valuable. They can't kill anybody in the comics, so it didn't really have any impact. So to me, like Planet Hulk to World War Hulk, like World War Hulk was a major step down. So when you say you would rather have that,
I'd rather have Norton do it than Ruffalo do it.
Oh, I see. Now, while I immensely disagree with you that that I almost said Timothy Dalton, that Edward Norton is a better actor than Mark Ruffalo, which I cannot agree with in any way. I think Edward Norton is very good at a type of role. He's excellent at a type of role. I do not see the chameleon-like subversion of role, not subversion, the way roles take over Mark Ruffalo. Like I can rely on Mark Ruffalo to play almost anything. I can't do that with Norton, so I can't agree with that. Like I would trust Ruffalo and way more stuff than I could with Norton. That said, I do like his Hulk. Where they ended up going with it, Norton would not fit, and that's another hindsight argument, I think. Would I like to have seen it? Sure. But Ruffalo is such perfect casting, and that's who Leterrier wanted before Norton anyway.
Really?
Mark Ruffalo.
Really?
So he was the first choice all along, and he is kind of my Hulk. But I'm not part of this, internet thing where everyone's just like, well, Ruffalo is better, so screw Edward Norton. Edward Norton did a great job, and actually, I agree with you. He is a pain in the ass. But reading what he did go through on Incredible Hulk and what he wanted to do, I actually have a lot of respect for him in terms of some of the things he was trying to do. But the problem with him is he has a history of doing this, where he gets some kind of control over a script or something and then wants to take over the entire production. So that is the problem. I remember that happened with Frida. He had a minor role in Frida as Rockefeller, I think. And, next thing
getting pushy. Yeah.
Next thing you know, he's trying to rewrite the whole script and this is Salma Hayek's baby, and it was like, no, go away. So same thing here. And I think Marvel learned that lesson, and they were kind of like, hey, we've got a plan, and good for them that they had a plan, because the plan is awesome. As Vinnie was saying, it's like once Edgar Wright started saying well, this is what I'm going to do, they were like, I don't think so.
Exactly. Yeah.
We've already dealt with Edward Norton. We're not going to deal with another, whatever.
Yeah. What about you, Vinnie? Are you a Ruffalo guy or a Norton guy?
I'm a Ruffalo guy. Just I wouldn't say that Ruffalo is a better actor than Norton, because Norton has probably had a more of a chance over the course of his career to show more layers of his acting abilities than Ruffalo, even though Ruffalo has been in varied roles. But look, if Ed Norton, you got Primal Fear, American History X, he's got some really, really meaty parts that he was the central protagonist or antagonist, whatever way you want to look at it. But and he's shown through. And he's done that for a longer period of time than Mark Ruffalo has. And Mark Ruffalo has had a bit of a second kind of coming in the last 10 years. And he's kind of hit the more mainstream with the MCU movies. And he was amazing in movies like Collateral and in Spotlight and stuff like that. So he's a fantastic character actor. I just think Edward Norton may be slightly better actor, but I prefer Mark Ruffalo's portrayal of Bruce Banner more.
That's a good middle ground right there. Not bad.
I think that's where it is for me. But
you should be on Cinephile Hissyfit. I mean,
here we go.
So we were talking about Edward Norton and Mark Ruffalo and who we thought was better in terms of as an actor or their portrayal of Bruce Banner. But one thing we spoke a little bit about when we touched on throughout the conversation is Edgar Wright, and everybody knows about Edgar Wright's story. I know this is a little bit of an off-site topic, but I want to look at that as in the way of Marvel have asserted their control more over their projects going out through the different phases, whether or not be that to be the detriment or to the benefit of the movies going forward. But Edgar Wright, he was kind of stuck in he did 7 years. He developed Ant-Man, and then when it looked like it was about to be made, Marvel and him kind of ran into each other, and they were like, Edgar Wright was like, I want to make it this way, and Marvel were like, no, this is the Marvel way now. And I was like, it's all connected. We're doing a serialized thing, and I think which might have lent to them actually hiring more and more TV based directors because the MCU is kind of like one big TV series, except each episode is 2 hours long, And what do you think? Do you think it's been to the benefit, or do you think it's been to the detriment of the MCU going forward, that they've had more control over the narrative and the style and tone of the movies in the MCU?
Well, I'll get in on this because I think that I think the Edgar Wright thing, and I have kind of a weird relationship with Edgar Wright myself, which I won't go into at the moment. But I think.
No, please do tell us. Yeah, this sounds great. Are you guys Snapchat friends?
No, I will. I will. He slept with my wife.
It was a Quantumania.
Here's the thing. I think that this was the birth of the discourse that plagues us today. I think that without any nuance, a lot of quote unquote film people, who are about the purity of art and cinema, they look at that and they say, oh, that's clearly the conglomerate and the business taking over for the artist, which I do not think was the case. I think this is a classic example of creative differences. We all hear that, and sometimes that's a loaded phrase, which sometimes mean, hey, you're an asshole and I don't like you. Mm-hmm. But I think this is definitely the case. This wasn't like Disney saying, oh, yeah, we want to sell more toys, so we're going to get somebody else. That's not the case, because I guarantee you if Edgar Wright made Ant-Man, they'd find a way to sell Ant-Man toys. That's just the way it goes. I think it's true creative differences. Edgar Wright wanted to make a solo one-off Ant-Man film, his own thing, which is totally fine. And I totally respect that, but that was not in the vision of what Marvel wanted to do. Marvel wants to do it like the comic books, which is... some arguments I've heard, people are like, well, is it anything like the comics? And to me, it's like the comics are more than just visual. It's a narrative. And Kevin Feige, who I think is above board in terms of his artistic developments, it's not a money grubbing thing. I think he was like, no, I want this. I want Ant-Man to be able to be in other films. I want him to continue on. I want this to be this Marvel Cinematic Universe that's connected just like the comics are. So I honestly find no issues with that. I mean, maybe, he was treated harshly. I don't know. I mean, it still seems like they gave him they gave him a producing credit. They still gave him the writing credits for what he did write, and they took in. It's not like they just, snapped him off the planet, right. He had a say still, and they were appreciative of it. I also think that, my Edgar Wright thing is that I feel like when he was kind of like the underdog, he was the perfect director for a Marvel film. Mm-hmm. He kind of made these kind of punky, subversive kind of films that played on genre expectations. I mean, I don't love Shaun of the Dead. I like it a lot. I love Hot Fuzz. I think Hot Fuzz is a brilliant satire of like Lethal Weapon and cop films. Mm-hmm. And Scott Pilgrim is a great comic book film. I think it's a very good film, very fun and interesting. I think what happened was, I don't know if it's a result of this, because he's entering the big studio system. But for me, it's like whenever you see an Edgar Wright film advertised now, it's like from the staggering genius of Edgar Wright. Yeah. And it's kind of like, well, yeah, he's fine. He's a genre director that makes interesting. He has his own cinematic language, but like, I think that if people fed into the Disney's a conglomerate just trying to make money and they screwed an artist, I also think the Edgar Wright camp started buying into the fact that he's this brilliant auteur. Mm-hmm. And so I think he's used it to his advantage just as much as maybe Disney has. So I have issues with it on that level because, I haven't seen the Soho movie yet because, I can't stand that type of, like I said, from the genius of Edgar Wright, an uncompromising vision. It's like just show me the movie. Like I don't need to know, any of that crap. So it's actually put me off of his films a little bit. So I guess I side with Marvel more on this one. I don't know, but
I admit that I side in that direction too, because I know this is a shitty analogy, but like the whole bigger fish to fry thing matters. Like and I think that's also Kevin Feige. Well, here, the easiest way to see that they're right is when you look at every attempt of everything else in other places. The unified vision keeps that stuff stable and from ever really wobbling out of control. Because when you do the whole, look, I hate to keep doing this, but look at Warner Brothers in DC. Like, they were, Nolan made his 3 Batman movies very independent of himself. You could tell, or very independent of studio and bigger universe building of any kind. And then they retained him as a producer and kind of a shot caller for bringing in Zack Snyder. Now, Zack Snyder, same kind of guy. Like, if there's a guy who can make a comic book movie just in terms of chops and skills, that's Zack. I mean, Watchmen's very, very good, and he makes things that are just visually dazzling. I mean, nothing looks like a Zack Snyder film. But the hard part is, like, once you bring Zack in, unless somebody's there to rein him in, and that's supposed to be Kevin Feige, or in this case, Christopher Nolan, or is it bigger than that? Is it was it supposed to be Jeff Johns? The comic guy coming down to the studio department in Warner Brothers from the paper end. Whatever it was, it didn't happen because they're either they didn't sit down as a big squad and make that blueprint that says, hey, we can bring in all this great talent, we can expand all these characters and this sort of thing, but it has to be under this control and this path or it all falls apart because it's too tangential and too crazy. Because by the time Snyder doubles down with Justice League, and by the time James Wan shows up and Patty Jenkins shows up, you brought in good directors to kind of resurrect and do something different, where now you have this thing that doesn't match, and you ask yourself, well, who the hell is in charge? Because at one point it's, people say, oh, Zack Snyder, he's still the producer on the Wonder Woman movies, Nolan kind of walked away after Man of Steel, the first one, which was just getting it off the ground, and he said, all right, you guys are good luck. Or is it anybody at the studio level who's got the balls to kind of be like, no, rein it in? And that's why Kevin Feige will remain the MVP of this whole thing, because he is, one, bankrolling it and controlling the checks and keeping things in pace, and 2, we all hear about that creative roundtable of kind of that inner circle of people that he brings in, that Favreau's on, that James Gunn used to be on, that they've got a tight-knit crew of people, and they still talk to Joe Quesada and the folks over at Marvel to make sure that things are tip-top and good. That the easiest way to say it is they've done their homework for the long call, the long game, and just the extended planning. And I think that's worth retaining. I think that's worth going, hey, love your work, Edgar, love your work, Louis, or love your work, whatever director stayed or didn't stay, and be like, we have a bigger thing going on than just you. If you want to be part of it, great. And we'll bring you in if you prove yourselves to kind of be, not necessarily play ball and do it our way, but just, understand the bigger picture. And I think we've all seen enough directors that they're one movie at a time kind of people. They don't see big picture, or their big picture is just so theirs and grandiose that it isn't ours, or isn't theirs, or isn't something that could be shared and translated by other people. And that's the difference between a Zack Snyder, who's as visually adept as Edgar Wright, but you look at scope or handle, and you got one guy who's very controlled and one guy who's not. You can say the same thing about Michael Bay. You can say the same thing about Terrence Malick. Now, neither one of those guys are going to build a universe, but the idea is, here we go. So no, but the idea is reining it in, and I think that's a good producer's job. They've got lucky with Kevin Feige, because before that, you look at Avi Arad, who did the Spider-Man stuff and held Marvel together through those bankruptcy years from 95 to 05. And he deserves more credit for holding it together. But you got those X-Men movies that got out of control when, like, Brett Ratner showed up and fucked around. You got those Spider-Man movies that were really good until the studio kind of said, hey, let's sugar pack, 3 villains into one movie for Spider-Man 3 and fuck it all up. Like, Sam Raimi had a good thing, and then you come in and make it bigger than it needs to be. So, and that's Avi Arad. Like, hey man, you're the producer here, rein it in, and no one did. So,
and I'll expand on that 2 ways. I agree with you 100%, because Kevin Feige also learned from his mistakes, because I think that Zack Snyder thing where it's his voice controlling the universe, and then when you try to diverge from it, it makes no coherent sense. That was the way the Avengers were going, because
Joss came in. Mm-hmm.
I'm not a huge Joss Whedon guy. I have problems with the first 2 Avengers films, and I think they realized when Avengers Age of Ultron was not like this huge success like the first Avengers was, they realized, okay, we need to get like you said, more of a creative vision, and this has created some discourse, like you said, about, you know, I don't want to call them company men because I think they're very talented directors on their own, but you know, the Russos wanted to play ball, and they said, yeah, we'll do whatever you want, and they were able to put their stamp on their own thing, but they also took control and let the studio guide them. And once again, there's another argument out there about how, you know, the Russo brothers are just a bunch of studio hacks. And it's like, well, first of all, you know, I mean, that's how films were made in the golden age. You know, they were studio hacks, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
But
contract
also
players, all that. Yeah.
But also, like, you found talented, visually interesting directors who would comply with the vision. And I get that. I don't see that as a negative. Many people see that as the death of art because it's saying that, like, well, you know, I'm hearing a lot of stuff now about how, you know, Marvel is going to tamp down Sam Raimi in Multiverse of Madness. Like, the movie's going to come out, it's going to look just like anything else. And that's where I think this discourse is so wrong, because you look at Kenneth Branagh with Thor, you look at these Phase 1 films, they all have kind of a distinctive trademark of their directors. You know, the Russos just kind of mainstreamed it a little bit more, but you know, you still get Taika Waititi making his own film. You still get James Gunn making his own film. You still get Ryan Coogler making his own film. You still get Chloe Zhao making whatever she wants. Like, it's just such a weird argument, and it makes more sense when you see it fail. And it's like if you fail, like DC, or not a total failure, but a failure. You know, people are like, well, see, it can't work. Like, they'll be like, well, you can't be a single person's vision, or it can't be the individual director. But then MCU does it perfectly, and it's like, well, it's a art is being compromised because no one has a vision. It's like, well, pick one. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's either a disaster because it is one person's vision only, or it's a success. You know, it's like damned if you do, damned if you don't. You know?
Well, I think the other thing is, like, heaven forbid you get people who can actually put some egos aside and share. The shared vision is a lost art in this business where everyone's out to get theirs. In a different situation, yeah, this is Michael Bay going, I'm gonna get mine. You know, yeah, Hasbro, yeah, I like Transformers, but I'm gonna get mine. Paramount, that's great. My name's on the top of the poster. There's people who have egos where that guy wouldn't take a studio note if it killed him. But you know, so you have people where you just get a collaborative space, and whatever patience they're doing from the blueprint level is enough to make people not necessarily play. I see, you're right. There's that damned if you do, damned if you don't, because one person's playing ball is another person's wonderful collaboration where, hey, it's kind of nice to have some help. It's nice to come in and have something that is put together and taken care of, where I don't have to juggle and, you know, hold anybody else's hand. It's been taken care of. Because how many other productions do we see where a director's got a great idea, or some actors, and you've got a great assembly of things, but then no one's steering the boat ahead of them, and it fails, where you've got a steady ship captain who's just asking each little deck and department to knock it out. And probably, and I think it's gotten to the point where you could tell it's now a hiring process thing, where they just vet. They don't just take a hot name, and you could say Chloe Zhao coming off of No Man's Land probably counts as a hot hire in a way of that's for industry cred, but Chloe Zhao also probably knows that she doesn't sit down into that movie and into that room without a vision of her own, or even just a compromise of like, I'm coming here to make this, and you're going to get kind of a little bit of me. And then Marvel has to, at this point, know, hey, we're bringing in Chloe Zhao. It's going to have to, there's the flexibility and collaboration senses just don't have ego here. And the cool part about Zhao is everyone, you know, every cinephile and hardcore film person's like, oh, she must have been just gun barrel to her head making that movie. Every interview you hear with her says she had a blast, and cool on her, you know.
Yeah, and Kevin Feige, to his credit, I mean, he hired her to do this before No Man's Land was a thing. So I mean, it's just good coincidence that suddenly she's this 3-time Oscar winner. Yeah, you know, that's doing it. But yeah, you mentioned that. It's funny because I've been hearing a lot about that about Black Widow, where it's like, they got Kate Shortland, an indie director, and they'll say that, like, oh, you can tell when the second unit takes over and directs all the action, she just directs the character beats. And it's like, well, first of all, she's never complained about that. And second, like, that is the essence. Like, how do you think movies are made? The direct, like, Lord of the Rings, which I think is a masterpiece. Like when you watch those behind the scenes documentaries, like if Peter Jackson didn't have like 6 other directors working on 6 different units at the same time when they had the same vision, and he's basically telling them, this is what I want, but I trust you.
Yeah.
Like, of course, like Kate Shortland's not gonna be like on the ground, setting up wire stunts or cars exploding. Like no one does that. Maybe Michael Bay does that, but like you don't think that any other director just uses their technical experts to do those kind of scenes? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, surround yourself with good people.
Yeah, so I think it's funny when people say that. That's like, oh, you can tell like she has no control over her action, over the action. It's clearly that she's just there for the character beats and to have a name. And it's like, no, like it's not how movies work, man. Like it's since it's so popular, it's under the microscope of it just gets under the microscope more,
When you look at the MCU, like the way we looked at there, you can see that they have a plan. Everything's interconnected. Maybe that's why they brought on more independent directors willing to play a ball, or maybe like to collaborate or to bring in TV directors because they're used to the more serialized nature of like telling a chapter of a longer story, because that happens all the time on TV. But like all of that shows that Marvel are great at planning ahead. They always release their slates 2-3 years in advance. But one thing that can be kind of levied to Marvel over the 20 odd movies that they've done in the MCU is that their villains themselves seem to be a little bit undercooked. And it's something we talked a little bit about off-fire about the deviants, but in this one in particular, I thought the villain was actually relatively strong for a Marvel movie when Emil Blonsky, played by Tim Roth. And what do you two think? Either one of you can take this first, but which one of you, or what did you think of Tim Roth's portrayal of Emil Blonsky, and what do you think of him compared to Marvel villains going on, and do you think they have like become more undercooked as the MCU has progressed?
Well, I mean, I think he's fantastic because he's Tim Roth, for one. I think Tim Roth can do a lot of great things. For instance, I think he is the abysmal Planet of the Apes remake by Tim Burton. The one thing that saves that movie is Tim Roth. He's so freaking good. He can elevate any project. And what I like about it is when we talk about undercooked villains, I actually think that, and this goes to the credit of sticking with the comics, like in the comics, no one really dies and they're always around forever and they always can reinvent themselves. And I think we're starting to see there's really this cool thing going on with Marvel where we're starting to see like the ancillary characters are starting to play a part, like Spider-Man Far From Home. Like there was like some dude who showed up in Iron Man is, like in the box of scraps scene, he plays a role. And then you find out that, Jake Gyllenhaal's character gets kind of screwed over by Tony Stark in the background. And now we're seeing Abomination's going to be coming back. He's in some kind of weird, it's like him and Wong are doing some kind of like thing off the books where they're like fighting, but like wrestling, like it's fake. But so I think this is one of the rare ones. I think we were talking off screen about this, but there's a couple characters that will come about, like an Ironmonger, a Yellow Jacket, Ronan the Accuser, something like that, where whatever his name, Malekith in Thor: The Dark World, where
in Doctor Strange, there's like one and does, where
you'll kind of be like, okay, fine, like that's just kind of how they had to get it through. That has definitely been some of the flaws of the earlier ones. This one, as a comic book reader, and maybe Don and Vinnie can agree with me on this, is when they didn't kill him, I was kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? Now, I didn't expect that I'd have to wait 13 years to Shang-Chi to get him. But the fact that he was alive in a comic book universe, that left the door open. And he's going to be back. He's obviously back in Shang-Chi in a cameo, and he's going to be in the She-Hulk series. So he was also in one. He wasn't in, but he was mentioned in one of the one-shots that Marvel did. Marvel did a bunch of one-shots, which I thought were really fun. They were talking
about the conversation.
Yes. And he was mentioned there, and that kind of gave the universe a little bit of complexity too. So I enjoyed that. I think on a physical level, Tim Roth has got like this, he has this ability. We've seen it all in many of his films, including like Reservoir Dogs, where he has this ability to just look like. There's a couple scenes before he gets all jacked
here, man.
He just looks so awful. Like he looks like he looks like what they've injected into him is like really kicking the shit out of him. And like, that's something that I think we forget. Sometimes these villains just are automatically powerful, or they like we'll talk about Ronan. Like he gets the Infinity Stone, and he's just like, oh, I got it, and I'm good now. There's no suffering or anything. And I think with Emil Blonsky, you get like some of that trauma of like your body changing and your mind changing and everything.
Would you say this movie nearly serves as better as an Abomination origin story than it does an Incredible Hulk origin story?
Well, here's the next thing about villains is you got Ross in here, which is helping a ton. Where, if you're having Tim Roth do the physicality end of the villain parts, and obviously still the twisted soldier end of things, and even his, as the number one mercenary you can hire, and you watch 40-something-year-old Tim Roth kind of roll off whatever the C-130 Hercules that he shows up in, like that guy is you expect like Joe Manganiello, somebody from like Magic Mike to come walking out here as the number one mercenary in the world, but it's him. But Tim Roth sells it. No, what I think helps a lot is that government moral side of it from William Hurt doing Ross, and I think he's given more to do than Sam Elliott was given back in the Ang Lee Hulk, where he's just there to be a mustache. And don't get me wrong, it's Sam Elliott.
It's a great mustache.
Bring the stash, my man. But Hurt does it really good here, and it really does help. And it looked like it was a lost cause for a minute there too. Like to have him come back, all these these films later were like same thing about a villain. Like he had his moments, he fucked up. And he blew it, almost costing his daughter and his, and Bruce and all that. But like he, in true comic book fashion, he's been able to clean it up and rise, like to be Secretary of State, and now whatever UN ambassador he is, and then the next general of that, where he's always going to be a puppeteer. And I really hope, for movie sakes, isn't he the Red Hulk? Like in the comics, like I hope they don't go there. Like just let Ross be that government figure that's just hanging there always, I know you guys and you guys are going to fuck this up,
That's more Kevin Feige's smartness too, because when Civil War, like you can kind of tell they were kind of like, well, the Incredible Hulk is kind of our weird stepchild of this franchise we've built, but they still pay respect to it by throwing Roth in there. Like when he shows up in Civil War, I'm like, oh yeah, like people forget, like when my daughter was watching it, she's like, oh, that's the guy from Hulk. I'm like, that helps, that little things like that help solidify the complexity of your universe, and that's cool. And I like that they have that in there. He's in Black Widow as well. He's in Civil War, so I like that stuff is in there. And plus, I mean, it's, you got a great actor, like use that, and he's a great foil because he's got that great, I'm kind of pissed off at you, but I'm right cool thing, like
grit. Yeah.
I love William Hurt, and he's great. So that to me is another Feige move. It's like, hey, we want to keep it in the universe. We know that people have to take a giant which is shocking that they recovered from this. A lot of film franchises would not, but there are two major recasts in the first three MCU films. You got Terrence Howard and Edward Norton are replaced within the first couple films, and they have found a way to incorporate them. And I think I actually wanted
the third.
No, I just meant that you had Rhodey as Terrence Howard in the first one, and then you had Don Cheadle in the second one, and then you had
Howard Norton. What's the third recast you were talking about?
No, I was just saying within the first three movies of introduced characters, they already replaced two of them. So, I just think it's another great move. But I wanted to ask Vinnie about this. What do you guys think? And I know I promise this is about the Incredible Hulk. This is what we're supposed to be on.
And it's open discussion. Incredible Hulk is the bonus,
Yeah. What do you think about what if kind of retconning Ruffalo in?
I hate that.
It feels a little weird, doesn't it?
It does.
It's a parallel universe, so maybe Mark Ruffalo was the Hulk back then.
When you're playing it like that, that's true. And that's the cheat you can do. So,
I think one thing I don't enjoy about the MCU is that, like, I'm a big horror fan, I'm a big creature feature fan, and I feel that Marvel have a tendency to nerf their big creatures. And like, if you look at the Incredible Hulk, as he's gone on himself, he's can become nerfed. But look, I waited 13 years, like you said, Will, like, to see Abomination come back, and I didn't want him to be Wong's pet. You know what I mean? I wanted him tearing up cities again. I wanted him fucking shit up. I wanted him to appear as a proper antagonist that was unleashed maybe by Thanos, even in Infinity War or something, or even in Endgame. You have that kind of weapon, like he's like a nuclear bomb. So you're supposed to actually, like, a nuclear bomb, you can nerf it. I'm sure you can disarm a nuclear bomb. But if you have a nuclear bomb in a movie, you kind of want to see the bomb go off. You know what I mean? I just think that is the way that Marvel have progressed, that they have this habit of nerfing their creatures or their monsters. And kind of like, I think that might be Disney's influence as the movies have gone along. And I like to see the monsters to be a bit more ferocious. You know what I mean? Like, we touched on
I'm with you.
And stuff.
Yeah. I still think... I still don't even quite understand in the context of the MCU what Loki's powers are. Like, I still
agreed.
Like, because he would do some stuff in the series where I'm like, oh, he can do that? Like, I didn't even know he could do that. Like, you know what I mean? It's so, I totally agree with you on that. I've heard that complaint. I don't mind it because I think they make up for it on a story level. Like, I know a lot of people like Don have complained about Hulk's development. For me, I love the fact that Infinity War sets up the cliche of, like, Hulk's going to get back at him, at Thanos, you know, by getting his ass kicked in the beginning. And, you know, any other person, any other creative mind, if they went the cliche route, they would have Hulk, you know, coming back at the end and fighting Thanos and making up for the fact he got his ass kicked. But what I really love is they went character on that one. They went, Hulk is scared to come out, and I love that. And then he finds a way to merge them, which I love. He's like, hey, I found the brains and the brawn. Yeah. Like,
I mean, I get that's his character progression, and that's part of this movie. And the unfortunate character ownership part is this. I don't mind that he merges, because that is part of his evolution in the comic, that he does reach that point of getting to a comfort zone of the big rage monster and the smart guy at the same time. But it takes years to get there. And you got, between Ragnarok, 2 Avengers movies, and this movie, I don't know if that's enough. Like, you're missing, because you take the arc of this, like, you've got the great street level movie that's this. Mm-hmm. He's your big gun waiting in the bullpen in Avengers. You're having, I don't mind the Black Widow, you know, the mind, the comfort level challenge that's happening there between, am I just the big guy you bring out of the cage when you need me and you lull me back to sleep? Like, I don't mind that push and shove that is happening there a little bit. I don't know if Ruffalo sells it all that great to me. And then of course he runs away and ends up in Ragnarok with, we've said it, Planet Hulk Light. And then he's able to kind of turn it back on to be the end of Ragnarok, to be your big gun when you need a big gun. But then yeah, I feel like, all right, his moment of going away and phasing himself out was the Planet Hulk stuff. I didn't need it to happen in Endgame, because you have this great big ending, and my goodness, you have the Incredible Hulk, again, a Mount Rushmore level Marvel hero, and you leave your biggest gun in the tool bench. And no, thank you, just a waste. I know he gets his one cute little snap at the end to bring all of his friends back, but fuck that. No, it's the Hulk.
No, that is
out there kicking ass. I want the cliches, man.
No, that is, to me,
character moment.
That's a fantastic thing, because what you expected was for everyone was talking about, all the fanboys and everything were talking about, like, oh, we're gonna get Thanos versus Hulk Part 2. No, man, I
still hope he loses Thanos versus Hulk Part 2.
No, but
at least you have the Hulk showing up.
But Hulk does show up, and talk about a complete change of character. Like, he goes from this person who's controlling his anger to literally saving the universe. I just think in an unexpected way. His
parts in an Endgame with the diner and shit are fast forward bathroom break moments for me.
No way.
Boring as fuck.
No, because there's lots of cool Ant-Man stuff in there. So it's awesome.
No. Fast forward. Tacos. Here you go, little man. No. Eat your fucking tacos, Hulk.
And but do you think, like, over time that we've seen that the difference in the style of the Hulk himself he's kind of when he Bruce Banner changes, like the Hulk, the character design or the monster design is quite varied from Ed Norton to when Mark Ruffalo reappears as Bruce Banner / Hulk in Avengers. And like, what did you think of the aesthetic kind of approach? Because not one thing we like to talk about here is the suits and the power sets of the different superheroes and the different kind of, because I'm a big nerd, so I just like talking about suits and shit and powers and stuff. But what do you think of the way they changed the look of the Hulk from Incredible Hulk to Avengers and going on? And I like the way he looks a bit more like Mark Ruffalo myself, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think the effects that showed up in 2012 for the Avengers look 800 times better than they do in the Incredible Hulk movie. I don't know if it was bad, performance capture of whatever actor was, because I don't know if it was Norton in a suit out there trying to do it. But and I know you can tell they were inspired by, is it Dale Keown, that artist from the 90s where the guy who went on to Impact and make Pitt. Like you could tell they were going for a certain look with the Hulk, but I think even the Ang Lee one looks better than the Louis Leterrier one, and then the Ruffalo one is chef kiss perfect. Like whatever advancement of textures and effects, like the guy's got chest hair even in spots, like just the skin quality and the stubble, like the skin quality, and of course like to kind of bend and manipulate Ruffalo there. It's perfect. Like what they did from 2012 on was gorgeous, but this one took a rough.
Two things. One is, it's obviously a time thing too. I mean, 2008 to 2012, that's like, those are light years in terms of, the differences. You don't think about it, but it is, let me go ahead and obviously take this with a grain of salt, but this is what it says on Wikipedia anyway. It says here that Norton and Roth filmed 2,500 takes of different movements the monsters would make, such as Hulk's thunderclaps. Phosphorescent face paint applied to the actors' faces and strobe lighting would help record the most subtle mannerisms into the computer. Others, including Cyril Raffaelli, provided motion capture for stunts and fights after the main actors had done video referencing. Now,
you got to go full Andy Serkis and be there every time.
Yeah,
and this may be part of it too. I'm not trashing other effects houses, but we all know who the cream of the crop is. It's Industrial Light and Magic. They did Ang Lee's Hulk. Leterrier went with Rhythm and Hues as opposed to Industrial Light and Magic, so that might have something to do with something with
because it doesn't even look like Norton. Like the Ruffalo one, you look at him and go, underneath all that, the growth and push, that's Mark Ruffalo, and even the Ang Lee one is enough of Eric Bana to kind of be Eric Bana. But this one's like another like, and then the hairstyle, like the Tobey Maguire post Spider-Man 3 hairstyle, like come on, man, like the must hair, you got some gel and product to lay it down, put some pomade in there, come on.
By the way, I would like to get a grudge out of the way here while we're still talking about this, but everyone out there who knows, Don does not like trailers, okay? So I have a Hulk-sized issue with Don. This is tell me, Vinnie, whose side you're on this one.
Oh no.
So when the first Spider-Man No Way Home trailer came out, and there was a Green Goblin bomb, and then there's Hello Peter, all that stuff. It's a trailer. It's released by the studio. Like, this isn't a spoiler. I sent Don a picture of Dr. Octopus that said Hello Peter. Yeah. And so at that point, Shang-Chi had not been released yet, but he had seen a press screening of it. Yeah. So he sent me a text saying, "I hope you enjoy Hulk and Captain Marvel in Shang-Chi." And I was like, "You fucker, like, I released you an image that is ubiquitous on the internet. You actually spoiled something for me." Like, so I have, when it comes to the Hulk, not only do I disagree with Don's opinions, but he also ruined the surprise of Hulk showing up in Shang-Chi.
You're welcome.
For me.
You got to solve this one, Vinny. Where are you at here? Because let's be honest, the Captain Marvel and Hulk thing is a very inconsequential scene.
Sure, but that would have been a nice surprise to have. Like, I would have been more pissed.
You don't say.
I would have been more pissed. But you have to blame the studio for releasing the Doc Ock stuff, not me.
I do.
But I would have been more upset. Thankfully, you didn't do this.
I think the only difference is that the image Will showed you was for promotional purposes, so it's free to use for the public, and it's in the domain. Whereas what Don showed Will,
I cut under the belt. I did.
Yeah, he kicked him in the nuts.
No,
he kicked him in the
I
nuts.
I would have been more upset because everyone knows my three favorite characters are Ant-Man, Hawkeye, and Falcon / Captain America.
Yeah.
I would have been more pissed if you revealed to me the Hawkeye ending of Black Widow. Like, I would have actually flown to Chicago and murdered you if you ruined that for me.
That one, see, that ending wasn't a surprise to me either, because like you knew. I mean, I don't know. I knew that Florence Pugh was going somewhere, and where would that go? And doing the Widow thing and what Hawkeye's done, like. I was like, ooh, it was an nice touch, especially with Julia Louis-Dreyfus showing up. And that was supposed to be Julia Louis-Dreyfus's first appearance and not Falcon Winter Soldier stuff. But it was a nice moment, but it wasn't like a jaw-dropping surprise. But knowing you as a Hawkeye guy, yeah, that probably would have stung me.
Because I knew I had seen set photos of Florence Pugh on the set of Hawkeye, so I knew she was going to be in it. But still, it's still nice to see that, you know. But anyway, you didn't do that, so you're not that much of a dick.
Well, speaking of endings there, what did you think of the final climax of this movie, like the big showdown between Incredible Hulk? We finally get to see Abomination, and is it Tim Blake Nelson was supposed to play the
leader, right?
The leader, yeah, and we never got to see him afterwards. And what do you think of the culmination of this movie? Do you think it was like, in comparison to like the follow-up with Iron Man, we talked in the last episode with Bengali that the last conclusion, the fight sequence, was a little short in comparison to the massive build-up we got. Like, you know, it was like maybe less than 10 minutes, considering that we spent 40-something minutes or an hour on origin story. So, like, what do you think of when you get a big creature feature, you got two monsters, you got to make them fight at some stage? Do you think it was a satisfying conclusion to the movie for you?
I do. I think that's where Lettier showed up and made just a dynamic looking fight scene where, you know, the Harlem setting, the street setting, same thing like we've been saying during this episode here, where you have a street level action scene in a street level heroes movie, where this didn't take place in Madison Square Garden or in a bigger arena or in some massive field where you can really tear shit up. It's out there in the public, where, especially post Iron Man, where this is, you put heroes out there for the world to see, and it has ramifications. And the nice part, and I know this is hindsight 2020, but you know, when this gets yelled at later, like, you know, look what fucking happened in Harlem, you know, like, we can't have that happen again. You need a Harlem to happen for the world to kind of snap and wake up and contribute to what issues are the negative issues that will eventually surround these quote unquote heroes. So no, I love the way the fight looks and is staged. It's a great mono thing. I love the use of the different, just the use of the props and scenery and the environment of the fight, because same thing, it's a Hulk movie, and definitely different than a Lou Ferrigno Hulk movie, where maybe you'd like bend a few bars, break a few cardboard box crates, but like the Hulk, like picking up a car, splitting it in half and mashing it down to be brass knuckles is bad ass. And then, you know, and the way the camera zooms to get to there, where you're like starting from far away to see him pick up the car, and then it ends right on his face just screaming at you. I dug it, you know. And then obviously the fight ending the way it did, the way Will's talking about it, and the way that the villain makes it out of this. It's not a one and done bit, you know, crazy death scene. And yeah, I enjoyed the potential of the leader being something down the road. And like and the actor Tim Blake Nelson's such a fun kind of guy to, you know, throw some sarcasm in there. And if he were to get a maniacal bend to be the leader, same thing with the character rights, where that'd be a fun character to show up somewhere as a side villain or a number two in one of these movies Hulk. Since then. That'd be cool. And especially now that we have Smart Hulk. Like that would be a fun little place to go. So I'll sign any petition you want to get Tim Blake Nelson back into the MCU. And at the same time, I'll sign whatever petition to let Louis Leterrier shoot another action scene. That was pretty damn cool.
Yeah, I love the build up of them charging each other down the street. It's got a good level, good energy to it. I do like the fact that it gets to the core of the emotion of, you know, Hulk's about to choke this dude out, and Betty's like, no, don't do that, and he's like, oh, okay, that's a character humanity. Yeah, and that I like. And he says Hulk smash, dude. So
I love that scene.
Yeah.
I think that's the best thing. One of the best things about this movie is the button scene on the end of the Hulk smash. He's choking him out with the chain. You know, like all that sequence. I think it just kind of builds up nicely throughout. It's like massive scope throughout the cityscape, and poor New York always gets it. And then it runs through New York, and then right at the end, it's like you need a personal kind of twist to the story.
Yeah.
You put them one-on-one on a rooftop, and the only people that they really care about, there's consequential to either of them, is Thunderbolt Ross for Blumsky, and then it's Bentley Ross for Bruce Banner, and they're both in the helicopter at the end.
I like that there's some casualties too, because like before the Hulk enters in there to kind of even the fight, Abomination's down there killing motherfuckers. Like he's blasting cars, beating up the military, throwing people against walls. Like he's fucking shit up. Like it's not a Marvel thing where I don't want to say it's a Marvel thing, but it's not a soft movie where he's just breaking a few buildings and walls of inconsequential this and inconsequential that. Or again, they're out in some natural space where no one can get hurt, but these two combatants, no, they're in the street where there's peril there. And I dug that.
I do like how Taika Waititi kind of rewrote a scene from this movie in Ragnarok, and played it.
Rainbow Bridge scene?
Yeah, because like in this one, he jumps off the helicopter, becomes the Hulk when he comes down, and then in Thor Ragnarok, he comes out and he's like, "I'm going to be the Hulk," and he just falls. Flat. And I do love that. I do love that, but I definitely some compelling imagery in the final fight. We also get a very, 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 very brief cameo of the late Michael K. Williams, who I guess might have had a bigger role because Norton said he wrote the character because he loves Omar from The Wire. But obviously, just in the movie, he has one of those, and then he's done. So there must have been something else there. But so it's kind of fun to see that. And then also there is more retroactive stuff. There's the teacher from Spider-Man, Martin Starr.
Right.
It's one of the students who they confirmed later was him.
Pizza, right? Yeah.
Yep.
That's a cool connection there. That's
a fun little connection. It's kind of like the Iron Man 2 connection where the little kid is Peter Parker at the expo.
Yeah, I like that. I know is that been confirmed or is that just a fun conspiracy theory?
No, it's confirmed by Feige on both.
That.
So it's pretty cool. Like it's nice building the density of your universe,
Yeah.
So before we go to the break, do you want to say anything else about the Hulk, or we go to the break and we come back with what if and best and worst?
Yeah, I'll do what if and best and worst.
Sure. Awesome. So all right, folks, this is Dark Side of the Moon, and see you after the break. Now, word from our sponsors. Welcome back from the break. This is Dark Side of the Moon. I'm still here with Don Shanahan and Will Johnson. We're still talking Incredible Hulk. Before we went to the break, we broke down the movie. We gave you our thoughts from the villains to how we thought about the tone, the stylistic changes from Marvel going on. But like the big question we really want to ask is the big question Marvel asks us constantly is what if? What if we were the directors of The Incredible Hulk? What would we have changed? The one thing we would have loved to have changed about the Incredible Hulk experience. So I'm going to give it to you, Will, because I asked Don the first question the first time around. So Will, what if you were the director of The Incredible Hulk? What would you change if you didn't have Ed Norton breathing down your throat?
Yeah, good question. No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure.
Yeah,
we're all about the softball questions here.
I'm not because I want to separate it from hindsight. I want to separate it from what we ended up getting with the Hulk. I want to put myself in the time period of 2008 or 2009 or whatever, and look at it as an individual film in this universe. If that was a choice, if I'm looking at it from when I saw it on my birthday, actually, or not my birthday, but right before my birthday in theaters. And I remember thinking, that was a great time. I don't know if I'd change anything, to be honest with you. I mean,
no offense in here, motherfucker. Give me an answer.
I know your answer. I know your answer.
No.
You would take the first casting. You would go back and take the first casting choice of Ruffalo over Norton, and probably even still make the same movie, but with Ruffalo.
That's a hindsight thing, though, and I don't want to do a hindsight because I have to go with the movie that's presented to me. I understand that there's a recast. It doesn't make me like Rhodey less in Iron Man. That I know
like Rhodey less.
Same as
Terrence Howard's such a cooler motherfucker than Don Cheadle.
He's so much more like Robert Downey Jr. as well. They seem like they're actual friends. Their chemistry is way more natural.
And Don's just like your uncle from down the street. He's also old. Don Cheadle, I know Don Cheadle age is great, but he's like 65 years old. Come on.
Well, enough of your bullshit. So anyway, I honestly, I mean, I think it's a very competent film. It's great. I enjoy it. I really can't, and it's not my place. Honestly, I hate to avoid the question, but this is someone's vision. It's not my place.
You're avoiding the question.
No, it's if there was a character beat I didn't like or a plot point I didn't like, but in terms of how everything looks and everything goes, I'm fine with it. I wouldn't make any changes.
Put that question back to me. I admit the temptation of Ruffalo is there, even though I'm a Norton guy. Tonally, Liv Tyler is a question mark for me in the movie because she just has she's such a willowy presence as it is. I know she's kind of sort of played half of a tough heroine in the Lord of the Rings movies, but let's be honest, she starts tough and then turns into a princess. And it's been giving very, like, her professional move now is a worried look. Like, I'm not saying she's a classic damsel in distress, but she's not a quote unquote strong female character.
Yeah. I
would have gladly taken a little more meat to Betty. I know she's placed in situations that allow a little bit of challenge and decision because obviously it's the career and livelihood and her father on one end and of course the man she loves that she's missing on the other. And I would have asked Liv to play those a little harder if I'm a director. Like, hey Liv, like I get it, you have a great worried look and you can cry on command, but give me something stronger. Berate your father harder. Berate Bruce a little harder. Like, go harder, Liv, is what I would tell you. I'm like, you got Edward Norton here. You got Tim Roth here. You got people who go hard. I also probably would have asked Ty Burrell to go a little harder too, like as the Doc Samson character. And that's another planted hero we may never get. But like, I know he plays the disapproving boyfriend character and the older intellectual boyfriend, but I would have asked for somebody and something a little harder from Ty as well. I think another place where I would change it a little bit is two places left, I would say, is Craig Armstrong's music is okay.
Okay.
It's okay, but like I admit, and this is call me a nostalgia guy coming off the heels of something like Ghostbusters this past weekend where, Rob Simonson, brings in a little bit of the old Elmer Bernstein noodly doodly twinkle.
A little.
But like I like
you in the face with it.
But when you hear the old Emma Bernstein music, the little strutting, little dawdling music, like that's Ghostbusters. And I know Craig Robinson gets like a half a second to drop a little Lonely Man theme in here to kind of be your echo from the old TV show, because nicely this movie is not an origin story, yet at the same time through those little flashbacks and opening scenes, like you can tell Norton is doing the Bixby Light thing, the same chair, the same setup, the same, like this could easily very well be the TV show brought to now, only you just play the present day as being the same thing that happens, where I would have liked to see a little more nuance from Armstrong's score. And then the last thing is, if we're doing post-credit scenes, that deleted scene from Incredible Hulk where he's, that hike out to the Arctic. Now, I don't care about the Captain America part at the end, but that's a really fucking cool scene when, instead of a bar in Tony Stark, the at wits end, because again, that's the Norton version of this I liked, is that the stress and the torture of what he feels is inside him, Norton plays so much better than Ruffalo ever could dream of doing. And
that's a very Frankenstein thing too, because the end of the Frankenstein book, he kind of is out in the wilderness, searching for a wife, the monster. So out in the Arctic wilderness, searching for a wife. So it's kind of very Frankenstein-esque.
I love that deleted scene of ready to kill himself. And at the end of the earth, and even the music of that deleted scene, like fucking towers the moment, and then all of a sudden those eyes go green, and nope, I fucking still got you. And like the Hulk is just wrapped around that man's soul as much as it is the DNA in his body. And to me, that's the Hulk, man.
I don't know.
That's the tortured stuff.
I agree, but the scene
that's the end of my movie. Is that scene post credits?
Now,
whether I don't need the Captain America springboard that's always fun in there, but
but the scene where this is where I like Ruffalo a little bit more in terms of humanity. That scene in the first Avengers where he says, "I fucking blew my head off," and Hulk spit out the bullet. Like he sells that like with so much defeat in his eyes. Like,
but imagine if that scene was like, because that's he's referencing a deleted scene we never got. Imagine if it was in the movie.
Yeah, no, but I like. Yeah, if it was in the movie, that would be great. But just the way that Ruffalo sells it with that like feet in his eyes and his face, like Jesus, I tap in emotionally more with Ruffalo. I understand. I feel like I can connect with him more than I can in Norton. But I digress. But yeah.
What's your what if, Vinnie?
My what if I was to look over it is like, I think I thought it was kind of stupid that the Hulk couldn't have sex. Like, well, is that the reason why he's really angry?
Tyler's hot. I want to fuck her. Let's go.
Is that the reason why he's really angry the whole time? It's just because he can't have sex. He's got blue balls.
I think you're right.
But no, seriously, I think if I was to look at it, is I would like to have seen a little bit less of the part in Brazil. I think, like, even though it was kind of cool, but I think he could really get back into the movie a lot quicker, because you kind of have an opening sequence origin story, and then they slow the movie right down to, okay, this is where he's at, and then you have all this unnecessary character development, because like literally
the science, the bottle factory, the plant search,
exactly,
the texting with Samuel. I get you.
I take out the factory and then have the fact that he's communicating, even though it's encrypted, that they found the source of his communications. And you can take out the entire bottle factory thing, and then you have Emil Blonsky coming in about 10-15 minutes earlier into the movie, and then you can have more action on the movie then, because you can't pick up a movie at 60-70 miles an hour and go, oh, by the way, we're going to drop it down to 30 miles an hour for about 15-20 minutes and build characters. Like, I thought we weren't going to build characters. That's the whole point of the opening sequence origin story. So take out the bottles, and then you put in, okay, his communication device was tapped, or they have an agent there or an asset, and he gets found. And I think you can have that, and you can have a couple of more action sequences because of that, you know?
I like that. You shave that bottle sequence. I know it leads to a really cute Stan Lee cameo, but you shave that bottle sequence down to just the reclusive scientist in an apartment looking for that cure, and you accelerate the hacking part of it that finds him. Yeah, that would work really good.
Yeah.
Put those 15 minutes later into something else. Yeah.
Which Stanley cameo do you like better, this one or the one in Ang Lee's Hulk with Lou Ferrigno?
I like it's the security guard one in the Ang Lee one. I like this one because it's just silly, you know, and the cool old man and the circumstances where like, did he, like, is there somebody out there who's got a little, you know, like very Woody Harrelson Venom? Like, is there somebody out there who's tweaking some Hulk vibes at 80 whatever years old he would have been? Like, it'd be cool.
Yeah. I love that they kill Stanley. Like, they kill him in this cameo. Pretty ballsy, you know?
Yeah. I think as well, if you use the time earlier in the movie, you might actually get to see a bit more character development with Tim Blake Nelson's character, the leader. So, and then I'm always up for that because I love Tim Blake Nelson. I think he's brilliant, and I just think like that's what we talk about a lot in the podcast is wasted resources or mishandled resources. And I thought Halloween Kills recently was a big example of it, because you have a 90-minute duration. You really have to hit those beats very promptly, otherwise you're going to lose the interest, or you're going to mismanage 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and you're going to have filler. When you have an action movie, there should be no filler. Everything should lead to action, and then the action in turn should lead to more action with a little bit of character development in between, because that's the whole point of the action movie, you know. And so that's our what ifs. And when you look back at the Incredible Hulk experience, Don, I'll go with you first. What was your best and what was your worst of the Incredible Hulk? Like, of the whole thing, what do you think was your favorite and what was your least favorite of the whole thing?
My best, that Harlem fight. That Harlem fight's so damn good. You know, like I said, shot differently than other Marvel fights have been done at a street level with collateral damage and some stakes and a villain that's been tuned up where you're like, man, this could be a beat down in a good way. And like Will said, kind of an ending there where it doesn't go the way you think it does. It's a choke out. choke out, tap out ending where this villain could come back. I like the way that played out. Love the location, love the stakes and the people, like I said. So yeah, that Harlem fight, because man, by that point, obviously the dramatic entrance out of the helicopter is a fun thing, and then the trailers ruin that like crazy too. But just the car brass knuckles thing and all the pieces and parts of that very fluid physical fight that gets visceral and hurry, like it earns his PG-13 right there. The worst, I'm not as hard on the bottle factory stuff as you are, but I'll go back to where I did before, like the Liv Tyler stuff. I know like the old man, the pizza place, some of that saggy middle. Because if we're a man who's on a ticking clock trying to figure this out, I don't know if we're just meandering around old college. Same thing. I know that gets us the Lou Ferrigno cameo, and I know it gets us the Martin Starr cameo. But the Betty stuff and the Doc Samson stuff, I could care less about. It's done too soft. Yeah, that's the worst parts for me. Is
inconsequential.
Inconsequential. Like same thing as before with the what ifs. Like it's okay to have Betty, but just go harder. Make it more stressful. Make it more desperate than just come over to my house in the rain and we'll hug and then we can't have sex because the thing goes off.
And I think she forgives him too quickly. That's something that
really
I agree. Okay, this guy ran away and ruined your life. You have a perfectly stable relationship, and straight away you're like, hey dude, do you want to fuck? You know what I mean? Straight away. I just thought I'm kind of with you on Betty on that. I just think she was a bit weak sauce at times. I think she could have really gone a little bit harder on him, and I think you could have used her in a completely different way if you just take out Ty Burrell's character.
What do you think, Will? Best and worst?
I don't know. It's tough to pick between all the action sequences because some of them are really. I mean, I like the university action sequence too.
Daylight, yeah,
it's very good. I can't fault the action, and I can't really fault too much.
Pentagram motherfucker.
Tell him, Vinnie.
No, I don't know. I don't hate the movie, and I don't. I mean, I'm trying to think back now. If I actually did the assignment and rewatched it, maybe I would find something.
You had one job.
But, I had one job. Don didn't do it either, so
it's still sitting in the fine china over here. Yeah?
I'm not a fan. Believe it or not, I like cute callbacks to things. I like little jokes about the universe. I don't like when it's too cute. Like, okay, so I know this might be nitpicking, but like when he comes in with the purple pants, I'm kind of like, all right, that's a little too cheesy for me. You know, it's kind of like the line in, it's kind of like the line in X-Men where he's like, what'd you expect? Yellow spandex? You know, and it's kind of like, it's like, that's cute and all, but
not here.
Yeah.
No, it's kind of like it doesn't belong here.
It's like professional wrestling is a cheap pop, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I also wasn't a huge fan of the I can't have sex thing. I thought it was kind of a joke. Like I actually would have liked it if they took that a little seriously. Like they kind of play it as a little joke. Like, I can't get too excited, guys. Wah, 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 wah. Hey, it's Liv Tyler. But like, if they actually dealt with that on a more adult level,
you'd risk it, wouldn't you?
Like, what's it like? You have Liv Tyler right there, and you can't. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. That is a lot of MCU criticism is that they're too snarky.
Do you think she wanted him to turn into the Hulk? Do you think she wanted him to turn into the Hulk while they're having sex?
Well.
Not that weak ass character. She's too soft again, you know.
I don't want to.
I actually kind of want the edgy girl who was like, "No, go ahead, turn
into the Hulk."
I want that. That's the
Black Widow.
That's the strong female character I want. Give me the demon who's like, no, come on over, buddy.
Black Widow's like, Hulk out.
Because Natasha's like, oh yeah, give me some of that green snake moan, you know.
Green snake moan.
Is
that the name of the episode?
Snake moan, nice. I don't know. I don't want to turn into Brody from Mallrats and start talking about like what would happen if the Hulk was inside Liv Tyler, then turned into the Hulk. Like, I don't want to do any of that. But I don't know. I do think there was some stuff to mine there. I like the cave sequence, where he's confronting her. It's very King Kong-esque.
It really
I like
cool,
that.
actually.
I don't know. I just when I think back on it, I'm going to say that the parts that are forgettable that I can't recall are probably the worst parts because, to me, like if a movie has a lasting impact, whether you've seen it, rewatched it when you're supposed to or not, the scenes that stick out are memorable and good, and the ones that don't are forgettable. And obviously, I think at least a bad scene is memorable. If it's forgettable, that's also a crime in itself. And there's lots of this movie I don't remember. So maybe that. I feel like with a lot of MCU projects, I can remember every ounce of film. My favorites. Ant-Man, I could quote, off the top of my head. Civil War, all the ones that have big Infinity War, Endgame, they all have. It's like Indiana Jones or Star Wars, where it's like you kind of understand every facet of this one. This one has blank spots. So for that, it definitely is lacking in that department.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of along the same lines as you. My favorite thing about the movie was the action sequences. I thought it really hit home in the big action sequences. Like when you're looking at an action movie, like if you have your 3 acts, you need nearly 3 massive action sequences. And did that really well. I had the chase sequence in the favela. Even Tim Roth alluded to. I'm ready for round 3. And then I love Tim Roth's overconfidence going into the college scene. And I'm like, dude, he's like, and General Ross is like, he's doing it. What is he doing? He's just flipping around. The Hulk hasn't even touched him yet. And as soon as the Hulk touches him, he destroys him against the tree. And I just love that, where it just shows no matter how good we think the pinnacle of humanity is, in comparison to the Hulk, it might as well be an insect. And it kind of gave me that kind of feel where in that moment you see the real immensity of the Hulk's strength in comparison to a human, even a human that's at the apex like what Blonsky had. And that was kind of my favorite. Actually, like really Blonsky's character progression was probably my favorite thing about the movie, because even in the last sequence with him and Tim Blake Nelson, the last sequence they share together where he's like, what have you got there or something? And he's like, what, you got a little something in you already. The two of them joined could be an abomination. And even though that's a little bit on the nose, I just kind of love that the intensity of that sequence where, and then the little bit of blood trickles down onto Tim Blake Nelson's head, and his head starts slightly morphing, and this kind of big smile comes on his face, and then we kind of get the abomination. Then I loved the climax and the big moments of the movie. I think it was really successful. I just think in the lulls, you really felt the lulls. And with an action sequence, if you really feel the lulls in an action movie, I think the action movie didn't do its job correctly. I think that's my favourite, the action sequence. But when we had lulls, you really felt the lulls. And I just think it was a misuse of resources, like we always say.
Cool.
And do you have anything else you want to say about the Incredible Hulk? We get the fuck out of here.
I'm good, man. For me, it's. And I know Universal's just holding on to it because it's a chance for them to make money. Same way Sony's holding on to it. It's a chance to always have some Spider-Man cash. But there's still always going to be a lot of woulda, coulda, shoulda with this one because Ruffalo, to his credit, in the movies and places he's got, even though if I don't like Professor Hulk, he's been given and granted a full arc that we would have never gotten in an Ang Lee film. We probably would have never gotten in the Louis Leterrier film. So I'm happy, hindsight, that he's gotten where he's gotten. Could it have been cool with Norton? Maybe. But we're in a good place. He landed in good hands. It still woulda, coulda, shoulda. I still wish for that Hulk movie where he's the villain. Where it's how in the hell are we gonna stop this guy? And you threw everything in the kitchen sink with heroes at him to stop him, and that would have been cool because that's just pure rage, Savage Hulk. And there's enough snippets of that. 2 out of 3 fights in this movie is Savage Hulk, or enough of it. And I guess I know he's the hero taking on the other equally savage thing in the third fight, but there's still the woulda, coulda, shoulda for me, where I just want that character to snap, and Mark Ruffalo is going to make sure that he never does, or when he does, and if it's in the She-Hulk show or something further, I'll be ready for that day.
Bruce Banner always seems to attract really talented actors like Bruce Bixby, and you have Eric Bana, or is it Bill Bixby? Sorry, Eric Bana, and then you have Ed Norton and Mark Ruffalo. It just shows you the strength of the character of Bruce Banner, as much as the allure of the Incredible Hulk himself, because he's such a well-known superhero. But the Bruce Banner aspect of the character is he's a modern day Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And it just,
totally,
and it shows you that there is a draw there to the actual human side of this character, because you always get top level actors that are cast in the role, and it's always been that way since like as far back as the Lou Ferrigno show. Like, so it just shows you that this character has a lot more meat on his bones outside of the monster elements. So I think going forward, Professor Hulk is interesting, but I like to see that conflict. I don't like to see the conjointness or the symbiosis of Bruce Banner and the Hulk. There should always be a conflict, because this should always be his cross to bear, a weapon that he always has to aim it in a certain way at the right time, otherwise it'll be turned on his friends. And that's why, like what you said, like I thought the culmination for the Hulk was going to be he'd be the next big bad or something after Thanos, because you just keep building and building, as soon as it gets to that kind of critical mass, he's out of control. It kind of thing is, we're going to have to kill him before he kills everybody else. And I think that's
like I love that Hulkbuster fight in Ultron. Like that's a cool sequence.
Go to sleep. I love that sequence. So Will, do you have anything else to say before you get the fuck out of here, dude?
Will you close it, man?
No, my main thing is, and I was defending this movie to those 12-year-olds, when I took them to journals, my message is, if anything, don't throw this movie out because it doesn't meet up to the standards of what would become the standard MCU. Don't throw it away because of Edward Norton.
Judge by his contemporaries and his peers, not by what came after,
Yeah, don't. I would say always give this one another shot. I think most people, the consensus I have is when people rewatch it, they go, "Oh yeah, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was,"
Right.
and I mean, some of that may be expectations. You might be thinking, "Oh, I heard it's so bad that it's not that bad." Yeah. I actually think it's a good film. So I
think of lowered expectations.
Yeah, I mean, do I think it's like? I mean, to me, the MCU has. I think there's 26 films now. I mean, there's only like one I actually dislike and two that I'm like, I wouldn't put it in the but I wouldn't put it up with the highs either. So
no. It's
a nice little issue you pick up off the rack. You can read it, kind of digest it, forget about it, move on to the next thing. But by all means, don't throw it away. Because it does have some value.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting movie where the talking points around it afterward are nearly more interesting than talking points of the actual movie itself at times. Like the what ifs, the Ed Norton, the Mark Ruffalos, the change in tone and style of the movie, and the Hulk himself going onwards. Like, so I think it's kind of one of those movies that has left so many questions afterwards, and nearly the aftermath of the movie itself has more interest than the movie to a lot of people, But so we get the fuck out here, dudes.
Yeah, man.
All right, cool.
Yeah, I'm out.
All right, fools. It was nice having you. And all right, I'm your host, Vincent Green. No John Tui is MIA. We got Carmack in the back. That was Don Shanahan and Will Johnson, and that was the Incredible Hulk. So see you next time, folks. And we're out. Peace, motherfuckers.